So talking about the college football season, because I'm excited about it. I mean, new adjustments to the 12-team playoff. We no longer have to worry about the conference bid of whether or not they're the top 4 teams. You're going to get the top 4 best teams. And so to explain that, we have former collegiate linebacker from Pittsburgh and Northwestern to discuss more about that. Joining us, Wendell Davis Jr. here on the show. Yes, sir. We hear you loud and proud. So I will tell you this, Wendell. This is I'm excited for this college football season, and I love college football. It's more tribal than anything else. It gets you brought into a lot of these programs. So, when they made the adjustment, and I've been harping on this since they experimented this last year with the 12-team playoff, I thought it was entertaining. I mean, Ohio State, big program, they win the Natty, and you got some Clemson, Notre Dame, Texas. And now, because of without the conference bid mattering as the top 4 teams, we're going to get the best top 4, and then the 5 through 12, they're going to work up and down the ladder from here to see who is truthfully worthy of being up and in the big dance. What did you think about that, and what your thoughts are for the up-and-coming college football season?
Well, first of all, I was very excited for the 12-man playoff. I think it's way better than 4. We get a mixed match of matchups. I mean, we've seen teams that's never gotten the opportunity before, like Indiana, Arizona State, these SMU, even Boise State. These are teams that in the 4-man playoff would have probably never made it, no matter how great their season was. So that's what I did appreciate it. I would say I thought it was kind of unfair. I feel like, at least this is my personal opinion, I feel like the 4 conference champions for Power 4 should win. I think I like the old-fashioned way where it was the SEC champion, the Big Ten champion, the ACC, and the Big 12, and then you put your best group of 5 team, right? So if Boise is the best group of 5, you pick them. If the Sun Belt team is the best group of 5, you pick them. Then the best teams, only because of what happened to Florida State a couple of years. Now, I know the quarterback got hurt, Jordan Travis, and obviously they probably wouldn't have competed, but you take a team who went undefeated, did the criteria. And the biggest thing that I hate sometimes about the college football playoff and the strength of schedule thing is that, we can't determine how good a team is going to be throughout the whole year, right? So when they played LSU in Orlando, that was a top 25 matchup and a top 25 win. Now, we can't control the fact that LSU went on to be, 7-5 or whatever the record was that season. They can't control that. So that's why I feel like, in my personal opinion, I would love to see the 4 Power 4 teams at least, and then the rest of them at large, only because I have a feeling it's going to turn into the SEC Invitational, where teams, we've seen Lane Kiffin complain. We've seen other coaches complain about why they didn't make it, even though, Lane Kiffin dropped two in-conference games, Florida and I believe Kentucky, 2 teams that, I think Ole Miss were way more talented than Georgia. You lose to Vanderbilt. Oh, no, that's Alabama. You lose to Vanderbilt. That's what did them in right there. So that's my only fear. It's not that I don't think that the best 12 can work. I just have a fear, because the SEC, and we still have this mindset that the SEC from top to bottom is strong, which it is probably the second best conference behind the Big Ten. I agree with that. But I just think, the whole purpose of the 12-team playoff was to give those Arizona States a chance, those Indianas who went 10-1 a chance. That's my personal opinion, though.
Yeah, and it's funny. I'm actually happy you brought this up because, you look at what it gave us last year with Arizona State, and I've got a fellow player who played in the conference, who played in the college football playoff, and I would love to have him up on the show at some point soon to ask what that experience was like. But you got a chance to see Arizona State, and I think they're doing some great things there. Boise State, I never want to count them out because they've been a program that's, they've had a track record very strong.
Those guys beat Power 5 teams all the time.
Exactly. And so I start thinking about this and talking about, the teams that were outside looking in, your South Carolinas, your Ole Misses, and a lot of them that were just short but couldn't quite get their invitation. I call this kind of like the invitation to the Met Gala. I mean, you get your drink ticket, you get a glass of wine, and you're dining with the best of the best. So I felt like these teams that were outside looking in, they had a chance. I love South Carolina's defense.
I do too, man. I think, my personal opinion, South Carolina is my favorite to win the SEC and have a playoff shot this year. That's like, I love South Carolina. I love Shane Beamer, and I love the quarterback, Lenore Sellers. That dude's a ball player, man.
Yeah, Lenore Sellers, I've got some very good positive hopes up on him. But I'm thinking about this because I was saying, what the teams we got in the playoff, and you can agree to disagree, but I feel like half, if not 7 teams may end up changing in this college football playoff. There could be half of those because there could be some that might be kind of going through a bumpy road after just getting into the dance this past season, and some, like I would say, i.e. Alabama and a couple others that just missed it because it's a new coaching regime. It's a new playbook. It's a new style. So how do you kind of look at this now? Because I think there's going to be half, if not 7 new teams that might come into the playoff, and the same teams like Ohio State, maybe even Notre Dame or some of them that might return back into the playoff. What are your thoughts?
I definitely agree with you. I can definitely see. I don't see Ohio State slowing down anytime soon. I would be surprised if they don't get a berth. I actually think, some of the more comments. Before I say that, Ohio State, Clemson. I think Clemson has a chance to really go out there. The ACC is very winnable. I mean, besides my alma mater, Pitt, and maybe a Syracuse who won 10 games last year, I don't see where they really have any problems as far as playing the ACC schedule. As far as the other teams, Texas. I mean, the SEC is just tough, man. I mean, Texas opens up at Ohio State, I think, right? So. So, that's going to be a big game right there. I just think for teams like Indiana, I've seen their schedule release. I think they miss it if they don't beat the teams that are playing convincingly because their schedule isn't very strong. I mean, even their in-conference schedule isn't strong. So, I would say they'll have to be at least 1 or 2 top 15, 20-ish teams. And then the rest of the teams like Old Dominion and those other FCS teams or a group of 5 teams are playing. They have to win those games by 30 or 40. Convince us that you are the best team because that was a big issue last year, right? Was the strength of schedule. Indiana didn't play anybody. Then when they went out there to Notre Dame, obviously it wasn't really even close, to be honest. I mean, the score looked better than what it was. If you watch the game, it wasn't much of a game. But you're right, though. I definitely see a lot of teams, especially with the portal, coaching changes. This is the biggest thing with the portal, right? Every year, things can change. College football is so even. And I say the same thing. It's like college basketball nowadays, right? Like March Madness, anyone can win because you may have a guy in college football who played at Georgia for, his first 2 years. He goes to, Tulane. Now, Tulane has a roster full of Ohio State, USC, Georgia caliber players because of the portal, and now they're the biggest, hot, smokiest team in the group of 5. So it's definitely interesting, man, with the portal and coaching changes. But I expect probably to see a South Carolina in there. If Ole Miss can lose no more than 3 games, I don't see why they don't make it. So I definitely think we'll see probably 1 or 2 more SEC teams in this playoff for sure.
I agree. And, speaking of the transfer portal, because I know it was fresh and brand new, and you got a chance to experience that firsthand, when you got players that transferred in. I want your thoughts up on this because whenever you get a player that comes through in the transfer portal, right, it's a team chemistry type of thing. You come in, you get a chance to meet the coaches, you get a chance to meet the players, and then break down film in the playbook. What's that experience like? Because for some, it may work out like they could just automatically come in, they gel, and then for some, it might take a little bit. It might get it might take a little bit for it to gel until it gets right. What was your experience dealing with players that came in, and how did they mesh in with the team's chemistry, the playbook style? Was it kind of smooth, or was there a little bit of a rough transition until it got smooth?
Right. I think for every player is different, right? So I played 4 years at Pitt, and I actually was in the portal myself and went to Northwestern for a grad year. So I'll start for being a player at Pitt, having guys come in. So we always brought in a few grad transfers or guys come in every single year. Obviously, the portal got more popular later on in my college career. It was still kind of the old-fashioned way where most guys that were transferring were guys who were already graduated. But I would say it's definitely a learning curve. It's not as easy. It's expensive, one thing. Me going from Pittsburgh to Chicago, closing, ending a lease and for apartments, things. It's not cheap to transfer. So, and the schools aren't covering that, at least when I was there. Now they got NIL collectives and things like that, so it's probably a little bit different, but it's a learning curve. I remember when I was a linebacker, we had a linebacker from Florida, Kylan Johnson, transferred to Pitt. And I know it took him a while. He started for us and played really well for us, but it took him a while to grasp the playbook because, you spend time at a place like a Florida or me at Pittsburgh, and you're there for 4 seasons. So you're learning the system, you're learning the ins and outs, the playbook. And then you have to go somewhere else and learn a complex playbook. And depending on when you come, right? I came in spring ball, so I had about 4 or 5 months to learn that playbook, which takes some guys 2-3 years to master it. And then, other guys who come in the summer, you have 2 or 3 months to learn a whole playbook and be season ready. So it's a team effort, right? Like I was a Mike linebacker, so when we had outside backers come in, I was always, on the field, I make sure I knew everything. And if you're out there, you need help, ask me. I'll tell you what to do. I'll tell you where to go with the coverage, what we're doing. I think the biggest thing is having reliable teammates who can help you not only off the field, but on the field, because it's one thing to be in the classroom and learn everything. It's another thing to go out there and run at full speed. And you definitely need, it's a full team collaboration from the coaches, yourself, and your teammates.
Yeah, and I got to say, I mean, it's a lot of work for the coaches because they got to deal with a lot.
Right.
You get the money collective bargaining where now you're in the transfer portal. You then try, because I believe in this. I believe that the players choose you in college because you've got a culture, a chemistry.
Right.
I live here in Denver, Colorado. So, of course, when Dion came here, he had to, pitch that to a lot of these kids. I'm building a new culture. I'm here about building and developing young men to be better players and, be better people in the future. And then in the NFL, the teams then choose the player because ultimately it's somebody who fits the scheme fit and what they're missing. So I got to say it's probably a lot for coaches because thinking about transfer portal kids and then you got to go out and pitch the recruitment. It's a lot, isn't it?
Right, yeah, their job. They're trying to get ready for the season. They're hitting recruiting trails, transfer portal trails. There's a lot going on, and they have to teach you the stuff. That's why I think the biggest thing is your teammates. Like when I was at Northwestern, I had a fellow linebacker, pretty much the whole group. They always brought me in. They taught me different stuff because, I was at Pittsburgh where I had mastered that playbook for 4 years, and now I'm learning a whole new language, whole new terminology. And the thing with football is, right, everywhere you go, it's the same. You're going to play, most teams are playing a base, a G front, base cover, a base front, and you're playing cover 4, cover 2, whatever your base coverage in the background. The hardest part about a playbook, especially in colleges, terminology. Every team has their own way, their own language, right? This may mean this in this playbook, but over here, this means that. That's the hardest part. It's not learning football. Football is really easy, right? You have cover 1, just man, cover 2, cover 3, cover 4. Every team runs those coverages. You have blitzes, right? Cross dog, middle blitz, off the edge, corner blitz. They all run this stuff. The hardest thing is learning their terminology and learning how to execute in their system because every team is different, right? Every team has their own language, has their own philosophy. And that's really the hardest part, especially when you've been trained for so many years to learn one thing. So, obviously it's like muscle memory. Your body gets used to that.
And, I meant to ask this, and I don't know if it's a drastic change, but it may be just from the style of play between conferences. I mean, I watch the SEC, and I see a lot of some powerhouse offenses that are developed, whether they are all about the ground and pound trench or they're more about the aerial game to where you got a lot of talented receivers, right? You had the benefit of playing for both the ACC and the Big Ten. What was kind of the difference between style of play? Because I watched the Big Ten, and they're physical, they're in the trenches, and they're trying to battle for every single yard.
I would say both conferences. I would say every team because I played ACC. I played in the ACC, obviously played in the Big Ten. Then I played against in college, Big Ten schools. When I was at Pitt, we played Tennessee. We played FCS schools. We played. So I would say all across the board, every league is physical, right? Obviously, certain leagues have more physical teams. Like, in Big Ten, you have Iowa, Michigan, because they run more old school, Wisconsin, down the pound, north and south offense. But the ACC, I would say, you have to be an athlete. It's spread. The game is more spread out. More teams run no huddle, spread. There's more. I mean, it's a great league for receivers and corners. So you have to be able to play in space, run, run and tackle, things like that. The Big Ten is the same thing because it's no different. But the teams you're playing against, like Northwestern, you're in the Big Ten West. Now there's no divisions. It was one big conference. The top 2 teams played. But back when I played, which is not that long ago, but you had the Big Ten East and you had the Big Ten West. And the Big Ten West was those Wisconsins, those Iowas, those I'm trying to think, Nebraska, teams like that, where the ball, we're lining up. There's a fullback there. You got to take on that block and you got to fill the gap. So really, it's just a different. It's different, but at the same time, it's all the same, I would say. But the biggest difference is the ACC is more spread ball. You got to run and tackle. The Big Ten is more, it's coming downhill, fill the gap, and make a play.
So you had the benefit of playing alongside 2 of these players. Of course, opposite side from offense and defense, but you got a chance to evaluate. So I want to start with one because I do believe that Minnesota I think they're going to be just fine with J.J. McCarthy there up at quarterback. But you've also got a star receiver with Justin Jefferson and Pittsburgh himself, Jordan Addison. You know what I mean? How did you evaluate Jordan Addison's game? Because I love what the kid does, and I think, for Minnesota, it was just classic because it seemed like when they drafted these receivers, they didn't hurt in that position because once they got Justin Jefferson, they moved off the other. And then once they moved off of Adam Thielen, oh, hey, here's Jordan Addison, and he comes out and he is a dog in the rookie season. How did you evaluate Jordan Addison on the opposite ends of what he was like?
Right. I would say, Jordan Addison, I think I was 2 or 3 years ahead of him. So he was younger. At least from when I was there, he was a very quiet guy. But one thing, he always ran great routes, very polished receiver, sure-handed. He was very reliable for us. We knew when he was on the field, we had a good chance of winning. We had a really good chance because he was always open. He always in the right spot. Very hard worker. I don't really remember him going out for real. I know he was always spending late nights in the indoor. Just an overall humble kid, hard worker. Came in from day one in 2020 during that COVID season and made an immediate impact. Obviously, in the season after that, he broke out and won the Biletnikoff. But I always say this, man. The Minnesota Vikings right now with Kevin O'Connell is a young player's dream. You have a great offensive system. I mean, if you're a young quarterback like McCarthy, my thing with McCarthy is when he was coming out, I never thought he was a bad player. I was just always kind of because at Michigan he wasn't asked to do a lot, right? I don't think we really saw at least what his skill set is just yet because he was handing the ball off, play actions wide up to the tight end, right? So I don't. But then again, I have to remember I can't discredit him. He was just playing in the system that he was in. So but I think he could thrive, man. Justin Jefferson. I think Jordan Addison was a great pick for Minnesota. I mean, he had a chance to go in there, which he has done already his first 2 years. Had two great seasons for a young player, especially playing outside of Justin, where he can have more favorable coverages and show what he can do. Even when Justin was hurt, he was still playing really well. I know it took him and Sam Darnold a while to build that connection, but once they did, he was rolling, man. And I think honestly, man, I don't know, I'm not too sure of rankings and all that stuff, but he definitely has potential to be a top 25 receiver in this league. I'm not saying that because I play with them. I'm saying that because I've seen him work every day in college. I saw him play on the field, and just watch him in the NFL. The sky's the limit for him.
See, that's what I love to build. Like, hypothetically, if I built a whole roster, I'd love to have guys that have such a great work ethic. These are guys that are willing to learn, and these are guys that are willing to step up in the moment when they know it's a next man up mentality. And I think he's a great player, and I think he's got a bright future ahead of him. Now, the other one, so my co-host, he's a fellow Cleveland Brown fan, and he's covered, the Cleveland Browns. So, of course, you had the pleasure of playing opposite on the field with Kenny Pickett. And so I got to say, his walk is, I thought it was a great thing when he got drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. He stayed in state, familiarity. Now, some of the scouters were kind of concerned about the hand size with the grip, the spin, and the touch on the ball. But I felt like Kenny Pickett, he'll give you stuff when you give him the playbook and give him the time in order to master that and make it all work. And now through the journey, he goes to Philadelphia, and he's a crucial piece because he helps out to the Philadelphia Eagles to win a Super Bowl this past season. And now here he is in Cleveland. For at least our radio audiences here, what's kind of a thing we should expect about Kenny Pickett, and especially with the situation he's now going to be in with the Cleveland Browns?
Yeah, for one, I'm super excited for him and this opportunity in Cleveland. I know he's kind of have an up and down path as far as popular opinion and what people think about him in the NFL, but I'm glad he has a chance to kind of just restart, regroup, and really, show that he can be a big time starter in this league, which I believe he can. And if you look at his college career, right, he was one of the, really hard worker, another guy, always early, dependable leader. You knew when he was on the field, he was giving it his all, right? I never once questioned his effort, his heart. He played through injuries, concussions, all type of stuff. So I never once questioned his toughness. And I think too, obviously, we were so used to the, CJ Stroud-ish type careers, right? Where you come in and you're just rolling, Jaden Daniels. Sometimes it may take guys a year or two, right? If you look at him at Pitt, right, he's one of the greatest quarterbacks in Pitt history. But if you look at his career, it wasn't always just elite ball, right? He had times where he didn't play his best, but he continued to battle. And then look what happened. He had a Heisman candidate season, and he went first round, which was really dope to go to the Steelers, stay home, And I just think, honestly, like you say, he has talent, man. I'm not saying it because I play with him. Well, obviously I am, but like, I watched him play. I watched him work. He can run. He has he has a pretty good arm. And I think, he's a very smart player. He just needs a chance to really, play, right? I just think, going to Pittsburgh, that's been a team that hasn't had a strong offense in a while, right? With Big Ben, declining. They really never had an emergency plan as far as the next identity what they're going to be on offense, right? And then you bring in Matt Canada, where I don't think his play calling was always in Kenny's favor. Short crossing, the route combination, I wasn't a big fan of that. And I think that could hurt a young quarterback. Obviously he's, sometimes, maybe he has to play better or whatever you want to say. But, as a young quarterback, you're only as good as your people around you and your coaching and your play calling. I felt that he wasn't always set up for that monumental success in Pittsburgh. But we definitely saw glimpses of that, what he can do. He was very clutch for Pittsburgh. One of the more clutch quarterbacks in the league. I think there's some crazy stat where when his team's been down, he's won the game almost every time. He goes to Philly, backs up Jalen Hurts, gets to learn behind, learning a great system, great coaching staff. And it was one game I watched, the one game he started, he played really well in that game. And I was like, wow, like he's got some, he's got it, man. He just needs a chance where he can lock in, not him lock in, but a team that really just gives him a chance, gives him the keys and go play ball, man. And that's why I really thought after that happened, he would have went to New Orleans, but he goes to Cleveland. So I think with Cleveland, me personally, I think he's going to end up being the starter starting season on, right? Unless he goes to camp and just doesn't do anything or gets hurt, I don't see why he doesn't start. I know Joe Flacco has success, but Joe Flacco's 40-something years old. I don't believe myself that Joe Flacco is a full-time, consistent 17-game starter. I don't believe it. I think with Kenny Pickett, you have a guy who's a first-round pick. He has a great offensive system with Stefanski there now. And I just think, he's more mobile. You can do more with him. Kenny can run. He can make plays. He can improvise. He gives you an advantage that Flacco doesn't give you. And then with the other two guys, Gabriel and Shador, obviously, unless they come out there and just blow it out the water, I don't see those guys starting right away. So I think, honestly, it's Kenny's job to lose, and I'm excited to see what he does. I hope to see him go out there. And I really want to see him have success, man. Former teammate, like you mentioned, so I want to see him have success.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited about it, man. It should be an interesting situation for sure. A final question here before letting you go, and this is more of a personal one because you had the pleasure of playing in college as a linebacker and playing there up in football. And I know you probably have mentored a lot of the recruiting classes from high school, and maybe even you get a chance to mentor some of the younger ones beforehand. But if you had a chance, and putting you here on the spot, when you get a youngster that comes in and says, I want to play Pittsburgh football, I want to play Northwestern football, what's the best advices that you would give for these kids to build them on their pathway to achieve successes to maybe potentially have a career in the NFL in the future?
Right. So I'll say a couple things. I'm going to try to condense it so it's not super long. Number one, I would say you have to be disciplined, right? Don't come to school don't come to school, waking up late, showing up late to stuff, whether it's a workout, a meeting, a practice, even class, man, that stuff adds up. You don't want to be a list guy. You want to be a guy that's always on time, always dependable. I was in college for 5 years, never late one time. So it can be done. It just requires discipline, you getting up on time. And I wasn't always just going to bed at 8 o'clock. I stayed up till 1 o'clock, partying after a game, but I still was always on time for the next day. That working hard, man, always give your full effort. The biggest thing they want to see is effort. Like coaches know coming right away, you're not going to be a master of the playbook. You're going to be behind on certain things, skill set wise, that the older guys have, 2 or 3 years ahead of you on. But can you go out there? Can you play hard? Can you just show what you can do? And really, number three, I would say, if I'm trying to figure out the best way to say it, the third biggest thing I would just say is just go out there. Like I said, be dependable, have, great effort, and special teams, man. I can't stress you how important special teams. If you're not a quarterback, if you're a running back, receiver, tight end, linebacker, even a DN who's kind of athletic, get on special teams. That will give you playing. If you really care about playing, obviously it's hard for a freshman to come in there and start right away. Most freshmen don't start. A lot of guys come in, they think, it don't start, it's the end of the world. You have 5 years in college to make this dream happen. You don't have to start. You come in there like me. I came into Pittsburgh my freshman year. I was the 5th or 6th linebacker on the depth chart, but I excelled in my role with my group. I was going with the threes, with the freshman group. I ended up going with the twos a little bit because Mike got hurt in front of me, so I was rotating back. I didn't really know everything, but I was playing with effort, making plays, and I was excelling at special teams. all year long. I was excelling. By week 8 or something, I think like that. I played in 4 games on kickoff return, punt, punt and punt return on special teams. And some people may underlook that, but look, I'm a freshman, just got out of high school last year. I'm on the bus. I'm on the team playing now. I'm playing. You get a chance to impact your team. So any chance possible, whether it's kickoff return, punting, because most of the older guys, once they get their spot and they get comfortable, they're not going to take that stuff as serious. So that's where you can come in. So can you play those roles? And now you're on the bus and you get to play. And obviously, as year goes on, master your playbook, learn that stuff, and then you'll be on the field.
Love it, man. Absolutely love it. Wendell, such a pleasure having you up here on the show. I got a chance to peek at some of your work as well, man, and that's amazing stuff. Being right there up onto the field, you're seeing the pros, you're getting all of the best shots up from there, man.
Oh, thank you, man. My photography stuff, yeah, man. Yeah, I really do appreciate you having me on, man. Like I said, I figured why not, man. I love talking ball. I mean, I'll check some of your stuff out. You have a good thing going on. If you guys want to follow my TikTok page, I make sports content on TikTok and Instagram at WDJ Sports, man. And anytime you want me back on, you know where to hit me up, man. So I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Love to have you back up on here soon. Appreciate you coming on by, man. Enjoy the rest of the week and the weekend, and we will see you on the flip side.
Yes, sir. Have a good one, man.
You too, man.